There was a time in my 20s when I lived in Kearney, Nebraska, where occasionally I would walk around late at night. You know, sidewalks, parks, cemeteries. Yeah, I probably shouldn't have done cemeteries. But it was just a way to just kind of seek God in the stars and everything. But then I discovered that, sometimes there's some weird people that hang out at night. And then I discovered that people were thinking I was one of the weird people hanging out at night. But people who go out at night and kind of sneak around, they have a reason why they're sneaking around. They don't want to be seen by others. And usually there's a reason why they don't want to be seen by others. Nehemiah is going to fall into that camp. Now, we've been following the story of Nehemiah for a couple weeks now. And he's had this vision that he's going to present to his people about this wall that's fallen down. So he spent 3 days traveling. He spent 3 days resting up from his about 1,000-mile travel. And then it's time. It's time for him to go out and inspect this wall. It's time to see what it really looks like. So he goes out at night, so he won't be seen by anyone. It's time for his dream to face reality. So let's turn to Nehemiah chapter 2, and let's read 11 through 16. It says, I went to Jerusalem, and after staying there 3 days, I set out during the night with a few others. I had not told anyone what my God had put in my heart to do for Jerusalem. There were no mounts with me except the one I was riding on. By night, I went out through the valley gate toward the Jackal Well and the Dung Gate. And examining the walls of Jerusalem, which had been broken down, and its gates, which had been destroyed by fire. I then moved on toward the fountain gate and the king's pool, but there was not enough room for my mount to get through. So I went up the valley by night, examining the wall. Finally, I turned back and re-entered through the valley gate. The officials did not know where I had gone or what I was doing, because as yet I had said nothing to the Jews or the priests or nobles or any officials or any others who would be doing the work. So can you picture this? Nehemiah sneaking around at night, inspecting those broken walls. There's no other officials, no eyes, or anyone else is following him. Kind of picture him, like I picture now the Mission Impossible. It's like the spy. He's all dressed up in black. He's got the stocking cap that doesn't quite go down to his ears, tiptoeing around the wall. I don't know how much of that is accurate, but nobody knew why Nehemiah was there. Nobody knew really even who he was. But Nehemiah knew he had to assess the damage before moving forward. Can you imagine what went through his mind when he saw all that rubble? Do you think he began to doubt his mission? Do you think he began to doubt God's call on his life? Now, the scriptures don't say. I don't know if he waffled back and forth, but I wouldn't be surprised if he had his moment of just all-out fear. Because even as Christians, we sometimes waffle back and forth between our faith and our fear. And just because we have a God-given mission in life doesn't guarantee an easy path to success, does it? I imagine Nehemiah took in a few deep breaths, let out a few sighs when he saw the wall and the terrible condition it was in. If you've ever seen the movie Jaws, there's a moment where they're trying to kind of lure the shark in for the first time. And he finally gets a glimpse of how big that shark is. And he sees the shark, and his mouth draws open, and he starts walking back into the belly of the boat and says to the captain, "We're gonna need a bigger boat." Have you ever felt that way? Have you ever been there? Have you ever been so totally overwhelmed with the task in front of you that you have no idea how you're going to accomplish it? Now, kids, that might be something as simple as the sight of your room after your parents tell you that you have to clean it. And you sit there and you go, the task is so big. For others of us, it's going to the office and knowing that you could spend 3 days working and you still wouldn't make a dent. But let's be real. For some of us, it's much bigger than that. Broken walls have to do with families that are feeling torn apart. Or moving forward when you've lost a loved one. That's a broken wall. We've faced a few challenges as a church as well over the last few years. In fact, we went even through our own construction project just a few years ago. We had a lot of trouble. We had a lot of rubble ourselves, didn't we? You know, for over a year and a half, we did ministry out of Mitchell Christian School. Man, I'll never forget those days. Hauling back and forth, trailer, carts, totes, chairs, twice a week. Sometimes in the dead of winter. Sometimes our trailer would get stuck in the water or the snow or the mud. There was a point which we were working in our basement here for our office because that was the only space that wasn't under construction. And we were trying not only to survive portable church, but we were envisioning, we were dreaming what this church, this building, this ministry would look like when we got back to 601 North Sanborn. It wasn't the easiest of times. So just for fun here, raise your hand if you were part of that whole process. If you were started in the old building, went with us all the way through Mitchell Christian, and then journeyed back through here. Raise your hand if you were part of that. There's a lot of people around you, isn't there? Thank you. Thank you for seeing beyond all those obstacles, for getting us through those hardships. That's the church, isn't it? Just like your lives, facing obstacles, facing challenges. So with Nehemiah, he surveyed and assessed the damage. He weighed all the obstacles. Now it was time to address his people. What will he say? What words will he use? I mean, it's going to have to be one good speech, is it not? It's going to have to be better than let's win one for the Gipper. It's an old sports phrase. It's going to have to be more like, give me a wall or give me death. One small step for a Jew, one giant step, one for God's people. Or maybe we could have just used Martin Luther King's exact words. I have a dream that one day every valley shall be exalted, and every hill and mountain shall be made low. The rough places will be made plain, and the crooked places will be made straight, and the glory of the Lord shall be revealed, and all flesh shall see it together. With this faith we'll be able to hew out of the mountain of despair a stone of hope. With this faith we'll be able to transform the jangling discords of our nation into a beautiful symphony of brotherhood. Yeah, that would have preached. In fact, I would have preached this last week, wouldn't it? When I think about famous speeches in the Old Testament, I think about Moses saying, let my people go. Or even Joshua saying to his people as they entered the land of Canaan, be strong and courageous. Let's give God the last word here. When he said to Abram, I will make you a great nation, and I will bless you. And then ultimately said, and all peoples on earth will be blessed through you. Wow, powerful words. So what does Nehemiah say? What powerful words is Nehemiah going to say to his people to get his people to rebuild this wall? Let's read Nehemiah 2, 17 and 18. It says, then I said to them, you see the trouble we are in, Jerusalem. Jerusalem lies in ruins, and its gates have been burned with fire. Come, let us rebuild the wall of Jerusalem, and we will no longer be in disgrace. I also told them about the gracious hand of my God on me and what the king had said to me. And they replied, let us start rebuilding. And so they began this good work. Now, if you aren't overly impressed by that words, I don't blame you. It may have lost something in print. Basically, he told them in a quick way, hey, let's rebuild. And they responded pretty quickly, yeah, let's start rebuilding. So why was this so effective? Well, there's probably a number of reasons. But Nehemiah gets right to the point. He goes quickly, and there are 4 things he covers in a short amount of time that helps build his case. So here's 4 critical truths to Nehemiah's success. Number 1, he tells them the problem right away. Jerusalem is in ruins, and because the walls are broken down. Number 2, he tells them why this is a problem. The gates have been burned with fire, and we're now defenseless to our enemies. We become a disgrace. God is not on our side. Now, this has got to cut right to their heart, I would think. But maybe they knew it, but it was painful to hear out loud by one of their own. Or maybe they'd gotten used to it. Maybe over the years they'd gotten so numb to their disgrace. After all, they'd lived like that for like 90 years. I guess God's people are always going to have to be wary of doing the same thing just because that's all they know. Nehemiah was the wake-up call. Number 3, he offers a solution. We can solve the problem. He's asking them to buy in. Number 4, he tells them the reason why success would come. Here's the key. Because the gracious hand of God was upon him. God is still waiting for them to do their part. God is still on their side. He's rebuilding their confidence. God is still saying that they're his chosen people. He wants to bless them. He wants to ultimately bless the whole world through them. But come on, people. It's time. You start to understand why this was more than just even a good speech. Nehemiah had a vision. Now, vision, isn't that a mysterious word? Is that kind of just a Bible word? Andy Stanley says, vision is born in the soul. He says, vision is the tension between what is and what could be. It is something in us that says, this must be done. And I tell you, I'm not always a person with vision. It doesn't come easy for me. But I know I desperately need it because I desperately resonate with the 4 things that vision gives you. Without these 4 things, I know that I could easily get just down and depressed. I know without these 4 things, my life just starts to feel like I'm just going through the motions, like it's this dull routine and I just have to get up every day and go through it. I know that without these 4 things, my mental, my spiritual, my emotional health suffer. But a strong vision will give you 4 things: passion, motivation, direction, and purpose. Passion, motivation, direction, and purpose. Wouldn't you like to live with those 4 things in your day? How different would your day be? With vision, you can persevere when the walls come crashing down around you. If you don't have vision, one small brick out of place will throw your life upside down. So here's the $1 million question. How do you get vision? First, let me tell you that I think there are 2 types of vision. So we're going to talk about those. The first vision is to make your life better. So I'm going to call this the better vision. It's not about doing something new or grand, but just doing what you're already doing, but doing it differently. It's not about changing your circumstances, but living your life better. In other words, a better vision is about changing your frame of mind rather than your situation. And my friends, that's critical. It's the difference between filling bags of dirt and building a dike to save a town. If you call me up this afternoon and say, hey, Pastor Dan, why don't you come over to our house? Why don't you fill some bags of dirt with me? I'm like, no, I have an appointment. I have to get to that. But if you say, Dan, come with us today. We're going to build a dike to save a town. I'll cancel my appointment. I'm there. Same activity, different frame of mind, different result. Romans 12:2 calls this the renewing of your mind. When Pastor Josh talked a couple weeks ago on January 1st about picking a fruit of the Spirit to work on during your year, that's what this type of vision is about. It's changing not what you do, but it's changing who you are. A great part of this type of vision is it changes the way you live. Because now every day, every moment of your day matters. Everything can be holy. See, sometimes as human beings, we want to separate the secular from the holy, from the spiritual. So we don't think just doing the daily chores of our life and cooking dinner and dishes and putting gas in the car and mowing the lawn and scooping snow can be of God. That there's nothing valuable in those things, that they can't teach us anything, that God can't commune with us. We want to just say, okay, no, only when we do things that are in the church and when we read the Bible and when I give something to somebody, that's of God. And that's really hard to break through, and I struggle with that myself, but it's wrong to think of those two things as opposites. God can be found in every activity you do, and you must seek God and acknowledge God in your activities. That's to make your life better, richer. He's always leading us. He's always loving us. He's always teaching us. We're never, ever, ever just wasting our lives. Let me give you some silly example, but it's really not silly. Over the last couple months, we got a couple puzzles at Christmas. And then I got a couple more, and so I've been doing a lot of puzzles last couple months. I'm not really a puzzle person per se. It's not a passion of mine. There's some things I like about putting the puzzle together. I mean, you know, the search for the missing piece and finding it, and yay, I'm putting the puzzle together, putting in the picture. But there's a lot of things I don't like about puzzles. I mean, a good puzzle will take you hours and hours, I mean, really days and days. And you have to kind of set it aside and come back to it, and whenever you have time to do the puzzle, until you get, like, I don't like that. When I start something, I want to work until I get it done. I'm a result person. You know, I don't have the patience just to do that. I'm much more result-oriented than process-oriented. So just to enjoy the process of putting the puzzle together is like, okay, it's kind of fun. But I like the result. But what God is saying is, Dan, even in this silly little activity you are doing, I am teaching you, I am growing you. This is where I am with you. Learn. Grow. It's not wasted. We don't wait for a circumstance that can make our lives matter. We dare not fall into this mental trap. And if you start to live your life better, God also prepares you for this other type of vision. And this vision is kind of like Nehemiah's. And it's to live your life bigger. So we have the better vision, and we have the bigger vision. A bigger vision is about making a difference in other people's lives. Because you see something that in the world that's wrong, and you know that God has something else in mind for it. Just like Nehemiah. He knew what the Jews could be. He knew if they would just return to God and rebuild their wall, they could be a light to the world once again. We must do that, to reach out to a hurting world. Sometimes I think my mission is to help people understand that when your wall breaks down, when your life crumbles, God's opening a door for you to rebuild yourself in Him. I'm not saying He's responsible for the crumbles, but I'm saying it's an opportunity He's giving you to rebuild yourself. Either way, a better vision, a bigger vision, both visions have similarities. They require us to live differently. So I want to give you 4 things that we must continually embrace if we're going to be people of vision. Number 1, we must believe we can make a difference. Boy, I tell you, that's hard in this day and age, but it's true. The scriptures tell us that. Yeah, we can fill up our lives with pleasures and pursuit of power and money, and all those things can have their place in the right way, but they don't give your life purpose. They don't give your life purpose. Our purpose is from God alone. And we must embrace the idea, not that we're more valuable than anybody else, but that our lives matter. Nehemiah knew this. He knew deep down in him that his life was more than just making sure the wine wasn't poisoned for the king. Number 2, we must allow God's concern to become our concern. I think Dan Z has touched on this for sure. What breaks God's heart intersects with what breaks your heart, you have a vision right in front of you. And you let that vision grow in you like a baby in a womb, and let it mature. Nehemiah prayed and he planned and he waited for an opportunity to act. Does anybody have a vision like that anymore? Does anybody have a vision that keeps them up at night? I worry that nobody gets those visions anymore. Nobody thinks that anything's worth staying up for, to lose sleep over. And if that's true, then I think the church is in a sad state. Because I think God wants to give us visions that we lose sleep over. Yeah, it doesn't feel very good the next day. Oh, but man, it makes your life worth living. Number 3, your vision must be bigger than your ability. Because frankly, if you think you can do it on your own, you can accomplish it without God, and your vision isn't big enough. Well, you're doomed to fail. Because once in a while, we have to say prayers to God like, God, if you don't show up, I'm in trouble. I'm sunk. Once in a while, we need to say prayers like that. What sustained Nehemiah through all this was his confidence that God's gracious hand was upon him. Boy, you can go through a lot if you know that. The problem is, most of the time, God doesn't tell us how it's going to turn out. He doesn't promise us certain results. Will we accomplish what we think the goal is? Maybe not. But we trust God will accomplish what He thinks the results should be. When we're way over our head, when it's way beyond our experience, our wisdom, and our resources, often that's exactly where God wants us. Maybe not 24/7 every day of the year. Of course not. But yeah, sometimes. God needs you to desperately, desperately need Him. And when we learn that we must, and when we learn slowly that we should always desperately need Him, then our faith grows. Number 4, we have to share the vision to move it forward. Just like Nehemiah had to share the vision to move it forward. Until you can articulate your vision, you're just not ready for it. You haven't fully formed the idea. You notice how Nehemiah prayed every step of his journey? Because he knew his words must be God's words. I'm wondering why, maybe that's why the scriptures, the sermon isn't so flowery and so striking. Maybe it didn't need to be. Because all Nehemiah needed to do was speak God's words. And that's all that he needed to do. And that was enough. That struck the people because it was really God's words. It was really a vision. It wasn't a good speech. It was a vision. When a vision comes from God, it becomes part of you. Your soul won't rest until you see it become reality. There was a movie in 1989 about a man named Ray. Ray was a grown man living on a farm with his wife and his daughter. He grew up being a baseball fan. See, his dad was a minor league player, and so there was a natural attraction to baseball. And his dad's hero was a player named Shoeless Joe Jackson. This player guy ended up being banned from baseball because it was believed he purposely lost the World Series. Later, Ray became kind of estranged from his dad in his life when he kind of started to get older. And he was never able to reconcile with him before his dad died. And so Ray had all this going through his mind when he was walking the cornfield that one day, and he heard the vision, if you build it, he will come. I don't know what your viewpoint of that old movie was if you've seen it, but Ray had a vision. And eventually he was able to articulate to his wife about building a baseball field in the middle of a cornfield. So that somehow this Shoeless Joe Jackson, who died ages ago, could actually come back and play on this field. It was kind of like heaven for baseball players in the middle of a cornfield. So they build a field. And Joe and some other players mysteriously returned. But they still faced obstacles. Would you take a look at this one more clip from the film?
All right, this is fascinating, it is. But the fact remains is that you don't have the money to bring the mortgage up to date, so you're still gonna have to sell. I'm sorry, Ray. We got no choice.
Ray, people will come, Ray.
They'll come to Iowa for reasons they can't even fathom. They'll turn up your driveway, not knowing for sure why they're doing it. They'll arrive at your door as innocent as children, longing for the past. Of course, we won't mind if you look around, you'll say. It's only $20 per person. They'll pass over the money without even thinking about it. For it is money they have, and peace they like.
Ray, just sign the papers.
And they'll walk out to the bleachers. Sit in shirt sleeves on a perfect afternoon. They'll find they have reserved seats somewhere along one of the baselines. Where they sat when they were children and cheered their heroes. And they'll watch the game. And it'll be as if they'd dipped themselves in magic waters. The memories will be so thick, they'll have to brush them away from their faces.
Ray, when the bank opens in the morning, they'll foreclose.
People will come, Ray.
You're broke, Ray. You sell now or you lose everything.
The one constant through all the years, Ray, has been baseball. America has rolled by like an army of steamrollers. It's been erased like a blackboard, rebuilt and erased again. But baseball has marked the time. This field, this game, is a part of our past, Ray. It reminds us of all that once was good, and it could be again. Oh, people will come, Ray. People will most definitely come.
Ray, you will lose everything. You will be evicted. Come on, Ray.
Have you ever been there? Have you ever been that moment between fear and your faith, where you're going to have to choose between what logically makes sense and following through with the vision that you pray that God has given you in your life? Now, in the movie, Ray builds, he doesn't sell, and the people come. In fact, Ray's dad even shows up at one point mysteriously and plays baseball with them. Having vision will pay off. And there's a lot more important things the church should have vision about than Hollywood does about a baseball field. Nehemiah believed that if his people would build it, their people would come back. They will come back to being under God's favor. They will come back to being a light of the world. Same questions still apply to us. It's still the same vision as the church faces today. We listed 4 steps in your bulletin under your connection card that we'd ask you to maybe think about, pray about. And you're welcome to do that over the next closing minutes of our service. I'd like to read those to you, though. Number 1, my life currently lacks passion, motivation, direction, and purpose. I will start praying to God for a vision. Number 2, I choose today to live out a vision to make my life better, richer, more meaningful. Number 3, I choose today to live out a vision to make my life bigger. I will live beyond myself. I will live to help some need, some problem, to help others grow. And number 4, I will share my vision. I will find a person, I will find a group. I will articulate what's been burning inside of me. Again, I invite you to spend some moments thinking and processing that. Is it time to give up your selfish dream so God can give you a real vision in your life? Are you ready to let the walls of your kingdom fall so God can rebuild as He wishes to rebuild your life? It's our choice.